Colleagues, welcome. Good to be with you on a Monday afternoon. Happy President's Day to those watching live and those in the United States. Had a little PD action in my own school today and doing some grading and giving feedback, so grateful for the opportunity to talk with you as a break from scoring student papers and before going home. Today, our topic is school outdated? Is school outdated? Nice little provocative title here. And my question to you is, do you think it is? If you're here, if you can hear me, say that in the chat. If you're watching after the fact, say it in comments. Do you think school is outdated? And maybe you're, analytically minded and you're like, well, it depends on what we define as outdated, and I don't know, share whatever. But I'd like to have you think about that. Okay, good. I just heard my own voice coming from the YouTube live, so I think that we're good to go. I will contextualize what we're going to talk about today, and then we will dive into it, because I think that these are important things for us to think about. I think that thinking about these things, these existential type questions, actually is one of the best ways to become resilient and filled with hope and reassured of the goodness and the importance of what we're doing in schools. And now, I think, is a time more than ever when we need such reassurance. And our students need us to have such reassurance. So why this talk today? Last week, exactly a week ago, I gave a talk called The Student Motivation Apocalypse. And in that talk, I argued that we are in the midst of a student motivation apocalypse, a revealing and uncovering of just basic fundamental problems that exist in, I think, definitely American education, but probably even education more broadly. And what this apocalypse has shown us, I argued, is that we don't know what school is for, not really, not clearly, not in a way that's winsome and compelling and magnetic. We don't. And that we really underestimate the degree to which our students want to be motivated. They want to care. They want to do the work of learning. I believe that this is true of every student that I teach right now, every student on my roster. No matter how demotivated they present to me, I think that they would like to be motivated. And so last time, someone left a comment, and their comment was that, well, it was a lot of things, and this response was fittingly a little juiced by AI. AI helped clarify and organize the thoughts in this comment, though the thoughts were the responder's own. But I just really liked these questions that were asked. If we're asking what's school for, then we first need to ask, what is success? Okay, I'll go with you. That's a good question. Perhaps more critical question is, what will success look like in the future? Okay, all right. I'm a little bit nervous anytime we start to make predictions about the future or speculations about the future. I've been humbled by the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years of my life about making predictions about the future. I still do it like the next person, but I just think I've learned that they're not always super accurate. World's wild. So what do you think? Do you think that the definition of success in school should be based on some future definition of success? Do you think that's what needs to happen? Or are we good? Is that type of speculative future definition of success thing, is that kind of silly? Okay, good. And I see some people replying here, so that means that it's actually getting through. Folks saying outdated. Good. Ooh, and Elizabeth Campbell says, I think that the way some teachers approach school is outdated, and that's pretty likely where I'm gonna end up landing. That's likely where I'm gonna end up landing. Okay, and just to reply to a few things that people said last time, if you are someone that works with teachers and you would like to get them to maybe think about what I call the 5 key beliefs methodology, this way of approaching school and really paying attention to what people believe about school, I'd probably show them this talk or the talk from last week. There's a link in the description to the talk from last week, just because what we're doing in these talks is dealing with felt problems things that are pain points for all the stakeholders, for teachers, for students, for families, for administrators. And as we deal with those pain points, we're starting to be able to zoom out and get a better sense of what it is, what in the world it is that we're after. Okay, and if I haven't made clear enough yet, this is not like some high polished thing where I just spend all my time getting ready for talks like this. I'm a high school teacher based in West Michigan that is thinking about these things because I'm working with human beings, full human beings, in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, who have experiences of school. And I, as a teacher, have experiences of school. And so I think that this question brought up by the commenter about success is really important. So the arguments that I will be making today regarding whether school needs an updated definition of success are as follows. I'm going to argue first that success means simultaneously too many things and too few things. So that's a problem in talking about success, is that it's in like this linguistically paradoxical predicament. And we need to take that seriously. Number two, there is a lack of clarity around success in schooling. That's number one. Number two is that like this is always going to, whenever there's not clarity about where you're trying to go, what you're seeking to accomplish, whenever you're foggy on that, you're always going to end up frustrated, burnt out, demoralized, stressed, apathetic, like all the negative things that we experience as human beings that relate to demotivation. They're usually going to be at least somehow flowing out of not being clear about where we're trying to go. So in other words, the problem that we're dealing with here related to success is really, really a serious one, and one that I don't think gets quite enough airtime. And then we're going to spend most of our time talking about how this doesn't need to be this way. I have power just by me thinking how I choose to think, approaching my classroom, how I choose to approach my classroom. I have power to do something about these problems that we're going to look at today. And you, whether you're a student or a teacher, a parent, or whoever, there's things that we can do. So let's start with argument number one. Argument number one is that success today actually means too many things and too few things. So when I say success means too many things, what I'm talking about is a thing that I jokingly refer to as buzzwordification. Buzzwordification is just like a slangy way of saying when you use a word, when everyone starts to use a word and they all mean slightly different things about the word becomes linguistically extended or semantically diffused to the point where the word is no longer a helpful communicative tool. So if I say the word success to a room of human beings, any human beings in the United States today, then I think it's just a really, unless these people have like a huge overlap in their worldview, it's just very likely that as soon as I say that word success, there's going to be one person over here thinking about getting rich, one person getting famous, one person getting to live the retired life at the age of 40, one person being really, really good at a certain game or musical instrument. Like there's all of these things that are going to happen when I use this word success, and that to me indicates it's just not a useful communicative tool. Okay, does that kind of make sense? Okay, but at the same time, it means too few things. Like if you look at the way that school actually measures how not school, but how like governments, policymakers measure school success, they typically look at things like test scores, standardized test scores, graduation rates, and I don't know, those are really, really high-powered measurements of the success of schools. So that's an example where the definition of success has become so narrowed down that it starts to produce all these really negative side effects, and one of them would be like schools just, when it's just about doing well on a standardized test, that's just not a super compelling vision. And I think that in a world where artificial intelligence can like take those standardized tests and pass them, it just becomes even less compelling. So I'm not here to argue against like standardized tests or collecting data and measuring progress in schools, but I'm definitely here to argue that when you define success this narrowly, it will inevitably lead to problems, and it will lead to me agreeing that if we're going to define success in such a hyper narrow way that probably is outdated. But that's not like a new development. That's been outdated for a long time, because you're just like oversimplifying what it means to get a good outcome in school. So these are some things that people said last time that I thought were along this track. Sherry Wilcox writing that passing a standardized test so the building and district can get a grade, like that's a definition of success, where she's working in education. Alicia writes about how pursuit of the grade at all costs. For a lot of students, success is just, what is my grade? And that's a way too narrow definition of success. It's not gonna be super compelling for very many kids. Robert talking about data for the sake of data. Robert, I see that you're here today and you appreciate that North Korean propaganda filter that I used for that image. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was hoping to when I put in the prompt for that image. All right, so that's the first argument. Success means too little, too much, and therefore it, I think, is a little pointless to talk about success, even though we're talking about success right now. And then the second argument is that this is always going to produce these types of problems. So this is a book by Greg McKeown that I would recommend that anyone who would like to think more clearly and sanely in a world mired in distraction and busyness and restlessness and hurry, I recommend this book to just about anybody. This book by Greg McKeown, Essentialism. But look at what he says. When you don't have clarity of purpose, when you don't know what the heck you're trying to do, or when what you're trying to do is like so oversimplified that it's kind of silly, you're going to do worse at your job. You're going to be likely to find problems festering and multiplying. I mean, this just describes a lot of what goes on in schools. It describes a lot of what goes on in homes where families are doing their darndest to keep a roof over the head, keep food on the table, and support kids in school. We see these problems festering and multiplying at home as well, right? So when there's a lack of clarity, people are going to waste time and energy on the trivial many. So these are two really important sort of opening arguments, pretty briefly made, and you're welcome to argue back with me and say, for example, that no, I think success is something, it's not as bad as you say, Dave. We should be using tests, whatever. You're welcome to do that. But what I want to do is say that there's a way of thinking about success that is not outdated. To me, I know that I only have so many more things that I can learn in my life. I'm in the middle of my lifespan most likely, and I only have so many more things that I can learn. So it'd be really helpful for me if I can have a definition of education, an idea of where we're trying to go in and through my classroom, in and through a school. If I can just have something that's likely to stand the test of time, that's likely to survive AI disruptions or whatever comes next, then that's the thing that I really want to think about and work with. So to me, really, the reason that people are sending their kids to school, the reason that we spend so much on schools is because we have this belief, and it's unconscious for most people, that school is going to help you to flourish long term. It's going to help you to live a better life long term. And weirdly, weirdly is not the right word, but just what we think, the reason that we made schools is that if you master things like math and science and social studies and reading and writing and art and music, if you master these things, then they're going to contribute to you flourishing long term. Like, you're actually going to have a better life if you get as good at math as you can be. This is like the fundamental thing that school, I think, is built on, I believe school is built on. So what we want for young people, what parents want for their young people when they send them to school, what teachers want for young people when they decide to become teachers, is what we want is for our young people to flourish long term. We want them to experience flourishing long term, to go out and have choice-filled lives. I've heard it called before. That is what we want. Young people listen to this, watching this, and to understand that most of the adults that you're working with, they want this for you. But the thing that school is built on, the whole premise is that we actually promote that long-term flourishing by helping you to get good at music, by helping a young person in my class to become a stronger reader or writer or speaker, by helping them to build knowledge about history. Okay, and so this deserves a bit of unpacking, and this is kind of where I've spent most of my time in this last week when I had little minutes here and there to piece together this talk, is on, okay, but what's like the sound, evidence-based support for this idea that I often talk about. So I think the best probably support that I have in terms of a theoretical framework for defining success, like I just did on that yellow slide, is Marty Seligman's PERMA framework. Okay, now I didn't have time to like create slides about the full summary of Marty Seligman's development of the PERMA framework that you see here on the screen, but I did have time to ask AI to make a summary. Okay, and this what Claude AI produced here. This kind of lined up with my understanding of the progression of PERMA. So basically, Seligman became famous initially for his work on learned helplessness. He was studying this phenomenon initially in animals, then in humans, of how a human being can actually learn to be helpless. They can kind of become, or a creature can learn to just kind of like be listless, be aimless, be totally like stuck in non-action. Okay. And then Seligman, as he continued, he did his research on that, but then he took a leadership role towards the turn of the century and became the head of the American Psychological Association. And he started, his speech kind of kicked off this what's called the positive psychology movement, which is this idea of measuring not the problems that happen in human psychology, but the benefits that happen and the good things that happen in human psychology. So we should study not what makes human life bad and miserable. We should also study what is it that makes a human life really, really good and flourishing. So he wrote this book called Flourish, and in it he kind of lays out what he ultimately arrived at, the PERMA framework. And what he tried to do is go across cultural boundaries and just say, when you see a person who's sort of experiencing well-being, a person who's really having a good life, what does this person tend to have? And I just really like what he came up with because, positive emotion, that's great, but emotions are fleeting, they come and go, and so it's got to be more than that. So he got in this idea of the social aspect, like this is a person who's connected to other people in a way that's really rich and good and filled with like mutual acceptance and understanding. But then he also gets at this idea that you actually need to get good at stuff, you need to grow in mastery. So you can't just have a flourishing life. I mean, this is where when people say, what are humans going to do when AI knows how to do everything, like humans are going to continue to pursue mastery. I mean, and I'm ignoring the fact that I don't know that we're like for sure headed to a future where robots do everything or can do everything. But like, even if that future came to pass, people need achievement. They need to work hard at something to grow, and they need engagement. Okay. And, maybe there's a segment of the population that could be super happy just being engaged on, social media algorithms for every waking hour of the day or video games or whatever. But I think most people no, we need to get good at stuff. We need to connect with other people getting good at stuff. We need to connect with stuff that's like way deeper and bigger than just me right now today being flooded with dopamine or experiencing, flow in this game. So PERMA is just a really cool. I love seeing Marty Seligman's like career journey, because you see he starts on this really specific problem, but eventually he gets out to this like really, really, I think, useful and robust framework of what is it that we kind of unconsciously, nascently hope for our young people. And I think this is it, right? Like it's not just when I look at my students today, I don't just want them to all have maxed out academic achievement. I also want them to be able to relate well to others. I want them to someday be good parents, good spouses, right? I want them to attach to the reality that there is so much more than me in the world, and that's good. And so part of what I'm doing when I'm teaching young people to just get really good at history, when you are teaching young people to get really good at science or music or whatever it is that you teach, is that you're basically, you're doing two things at the same time. One, when a teacher is really good at helping young people to grow towards mastery, okay, to do this, to grow towards mastery, when a teacher gets really good at that, that's a teacher who in their class, they're going to be like creating a lot of little flashes of PERMA. So if we picture this graphic as like little lights kind of blinking off, when the teacher is really good at helping students to grow more competent at mathematics, like there's going to be positive emotion that just like, it's going to light up. It's going to light up all across the room. You're going to have a heck of a time measuring it, to try to figure out if that teacher's a good teacher. You have a real hard time measuring that, right? But they're going to do that. There's going to be moments when students are engaged. You see, if I could just make some glasses, right, where somebody could come into my classroom and judge my teaching, and it would just make these little lights pop off right around my students when these things happened. Gosh, you'd have such an easier time figuring out if Dave Stewart is doing his job. Because one way to figure out if Dave Stewart's doing his job is to measure the growth toward mastery. Is to measure, are the kids actually becoming better readers, writers, speakers? Are they becoming stronger in their history knowledge, better able to make good arguments based on evidence? Like, he can measure those things, and like, those are good things to measure. But I'm just saying that this is a broader, bigger picture of what it means to create a really good classroom today, and a classroom that ensures, as much as it can, a really good future tomorrow. A really good future tomorrow. Because, let's say that you're an English teacher and you're doing an excellent job. Oh, shoot, I should have. Yeah, I'm actually going to. I'm going to pull it up, because this is like the perfect kind of closing, and then I'm going to open up to questions. Anyone has a question or wants to throw something at me, please do. But I'm just going to read this story that a teacher sent me over the weekend that kind of gave me goosebumps all over, honestly, because I mean, it's just a beautiful example of what I'm talking about. Where this teacher is on the face, this teacher is teaching young people to get better at English in 8th grade, but then I just need to show it to you. I just need to show it to you. So if you have a question, if you're thinking of something, you're like, I want to ask this guy this one thing, then put that in the chat, because I'll look at those. I can see those. But I'm going to read this from Caleb, and I'll put it on the screen so that you can see it. It's going to be 4 minutes or so of me reading, so forgive me. But I think it's worth it, because it kind of shows that this is an exceptionally successful English lesson that I'm going to show you, okay, that this teacher Caleb wrote about. This is exceptionally successful. So let's go ahead and take a look. Recently, my 8th grade language arts students have been studying theme. It's a skill they learn about all through elementary school, but the skill gets more nuanced and difficult as texts become more complex. Right now, we're reading the graphic novel Mouse by Art Spiegelman. At the beginning of class, before launching into the text, I threw my students a curveball. Who cares about theme anyway? I asked. Why should we even be studying this? We're never going to use this in life, right? Which, by the way, colleagues, this is an epic move. Okay, this is called like flipping the script, or I think in my blog one time I called it the lead tasso move, where you're kind of like, you are presenting as the biggest naysayer to the value of your class. Okay, so I mean, there's a bunch of nerdiness I can get into about the rainbow of why and how Caleb is sort of supporting value by undermining it right here, but suffice it to say this: respect, mad respect on this one. This is a pro move. A few students chuckled. A few others looked at me and shrugged, as if saying, you tell us. But after a few awkward seconds, some students started to get the idea, because this stuff really happened and we can learn from it, Jay said. To get the author's message, to understand what they're saying, said Lucia. Yeah, I said. Now, can I have 10 seconds to tell you why I think it's important? And this is where I'd planned to launch into what educator Dave Stewart Jr. calls a mini sermon, a very brief moment in which I share with my students why I think what we're doing in class has real value to their lives and their long-term flourishing as human beings. Colleagues, you see, like, this language that I've been using with you, this type of thing that you can use, I mean, it really can, I think, like, we don't understand that the way that you think about your job and education, it changes absolutely, like, just about everything about your job. I mean, just about everything. So thinking about, okay, what I'm after here is long-term flourishing is really helpful for me. It's helpful for me to use that language with my students. So anyways, he goes on, he says, I told him that some books I've read over the years have changed my life, changed the way I think, feel, believe, and act. And that's because the themes of those books have gotten through to my head and my heart. And colleague, this is something that, like, AI is never going to be able to just make that happen. New technologies can't create this. The only way to get this, where a theme of a book changes your head and your heart, is to do work and do it with care. Like that. That's the only way you get there. Is the stuff that we do in school. Okay, and he says, I told them that I wished the same thing for them. I wished for books that would change their lives. And in the midst of me telling them this, I started to see some looks in their eyes that I hadn't seen since August. Curious, even hopeful looks. Fast forward to the last 10 minutes of class. By this point in class, we had read chapter 4, and now we were doing partner conversations about the emerging themes of Mouse. I mean, he's just doing basic stuff here. I love this story so much because, my whole talking to teachers side of my life is basically predicated on the idea that there's not enough people who talk to teachers and visit schools, do PDs and stuff, who are just willing to say it's very basic stuff that produces incredible change. So he's doing such basic stuff here, such basic stuff. I assigned him a task which partner A would say, I think the theme of Mouse is blank because blank, and partner B would respond with one of two questions. Why do you think this is an important theme? Or when is this theme true in our world today? After they completed the partner conversations, I pulled them back together for a group debrief, and I asked a few of them to model their conversations. Serena, who with her curiosity and incisive questioning will lead a country one day, raised her hand. See the regard that he has for his students too? That's another thing that is you totally change your teaching career if you can just try to see the goodness in your students. Just try to see it. Take some effort. She said, I think the theme of this section is about how money cannot solve all problems. It can't save your life. Aisha, Serena's partner, replied, why is this an important theme? Because we become too focused on money and it can't be the goal in life. Very nice start, I said. Who else wants to model this conversation for us? Michael, who sits in the front of the class, stood up and faced the class. The theme is sometimes you have to hide or run to escape oppression. Abdu, his partner, asked, when is this theme true in our world today? Michael paused a bit and instead of reading his answer from his notes said, this is my family's immigration story. And slowly a stillness started to settle on my class. I recognize this stillness because it is so rare and special. I hesitate to try to name it or talk about it, and I don't want to be overly dramatic, but it felt really important. I would read it as a collective feeling around the classroom as if students were thinking, this is real. This is beyond Mr. Nothwer's language arts class or fifth period or Tuesday afternoon. Something special and true is happening right now. Michael sat back down. Omar raised his hand. The theme is you have to keep going even if it means you might die. Why is this an important theme? Silas asked. Omar, with a small half smile, responded, because you shouldn't be afraid of death. Some levity broke in the class and some students oohed, and Carlos across the class said, that's deep. I liked the energy. Tell us more, I said to Omar. Why should we not fear death? I can't, he said. Not right now. It's too deep. This is an English language arts lesson that is hitting every substantial metric of success that I can think of as a parent, as a teacher, as a colleague. This is a knockout of the park moment. And what we do as teachers is we try to create these moments on a regular basis. We try. We try. Sometimes we don't know how. Sometimes it seems impossible. But this is what we're going for. These moments where, notice what's happening. All the perma that's going on. The students are relating to each other through simple sentence templates, but they're relating. Okay, the students they're engaging in this book. There's some positive emotion happening here. Maybe meaning like holy cow. Meaning's just off the charts right here. And I would argue, colleagues, that in a time such as the ones that we live in, meaning may be the most important aspect of PERMA for us to focus on in our classes. So, is school outdated? That lesson right there that we just saw, that lesson is the type of thing that, I think my English teachers were striving for when I was in high school. Probably my parents' English teachers were striving for when they were in high school. So I don't think that school inherently is outdated when we conceive of school as it's a place where we're trying to get better at old, timeless, big disciplines of human exploration and human study. So when we're in math class, we're not just trying to learn as much math as we can so that we can go out and use it someday. If it's all about using it someday, if it's purely pragmatic, then yeah, sure, school is becoming outdated. But when you reduce human life down to that level, you're just going to end up frustrated and sad and demoralized and bent out of shape. So I don't think school's as outdated as people say. I really don't. But I think that if we don't really start to pay close attention to what we know to be true about education, the educational endeavor, then I think school is going to continue to be a pretty rough place to be for a lot of people. So may we not do that, and may we instead think deeply about these questions of success and what school is actually for, because this stuff's where we're going to find the goodness. So I would love any types of questions that you all have. It's a little bit difficult for me sometimes to come up with what to talk about here. I'm going to look through what you all said. Yeah, so Robert, you and I are pretty well lining up. Yeah, and Helen. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that, Sean. Yeah, so I mean, and just to clarify, sometimes after I give a talk, I'll kind of I'll be laying in bed that night like, oh shoot, I wish I could go back and edit that or modify that, and you can't. But I just want to be really clear, like I'm not against helping kids to do well on tests, and I'm not necessarily against using tests as one type of measuring tool in a school. I think that we should always be trying to make the tests actual measurements of mastery growth, like mastery, versus just, the paltry things that they can be today. But, yeah. Well, listen, I think, colleagues, probably what I'm looking to do next is to talk about the will to teach, because I have a keynote engagement coming up in New York in a couple of weeks where I'm going to be talking about this idea of teacher morale, teacher longevity. So if you want to, kind of be there when I unpack this graphic that I made a number of years ago, then make sure that you subscribe. And my students said notifications. You got to click notifications if you want to see when these live talks are going to happen. Because basically we're going to be looking at this in a future talk, and the workload pressure cycle. These are some really good tools that I just haven't addressed in a number of years, but they're front of mind for me in my teaching life, and so I figure I might as well get some practice in talking about those before I go give that keynote in Hudson Valley Community College in New York. All right, much love to y'all, colleagues. Take care of yourselves. Be well. And I will see you next time.